Alright, y'all know what month it is. It's time for us to bring our flags out and watch corporations take advantage of bringing awareness to the LGBT plus community just so they can sell it for profit. Let's go! That's what Q-Force is, right? Let's find out. Okay, so first off, happy Pride Month to all those who are part of or allied with the LGBT plus community. This isn't the first time I tackled on a show that includes a discussion of gay representation as a whole. As someone who is bisexual myself, I will say that I do think that we're in a much better place compared to where we were prior to the 2010s. The animation industry, along with other media as a whole, has improved on the idea of good representation. But of course, we still have quite a few kinks to be ironed out in this particular field. One of them is the LGBT talking points being front and center in a show, whether it being the culture in itself or the issues the community has to deal with when it comes to the public image being portrayed by mainstream media. Well, let's say this show has certainly pushed those boundaries in full force. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Blade, and this is a Bass perspective of Q-Force. So yeah, when we talk about the visuals of the show, there's only one question that comes to mind. How far did they go gay? The answer? Yes! Let me be more clear. There are definitely scenes that are certainly out there with the amount of gayness that they have to offer. However, the thing that makes the show work is that there are levels to the amount that is shown depending on how the story is set up. While yes, there are going to be scenes that's going to make a person uncomfortable if it's something they're not used to, but it is necessary from a story-driven perspective, which is something I'll get to later. The character designs are very interesting to look at. The thing that I enjoy about the designs is how they're able to play different sides of their personality. Deb is a very good example. While she has the body that makes it clear that she is the muscle of the group, it also comes off as being a parental figure that is big on family. That's something I really had to applaud when it comes to this show, is how they were able to make the characters look distinct to make them seem like they follow a stereotype. But if you watch it from the beginning to end, a lot of those designs can be flexible in showing the different traits of a character. I think it's also a good thing that they didn't really go all out on the spy-related gear. That was one of my personal concerns before viewing the show for the first time. Because with this being a show focused on the LGBT plus community and how bad of a reception the show has gotten from the teaser trailer, my biggest fear was that they would try to include wacky homo-related items to be used as weapons. Like those big fans drag queens use, but they have knife tips like katana. But the gadgets were very subtle. Sure, there are items used that are only convenient to the plot when it calls for it, but it's very rare in this case. The scenery is also very wonderful to look at. They have some beautiful shots of the places they go to. The saturation of the scenes are very pleasing to the eye. There's a lot of positives here. The show is very desirable, even if there are certainly decisions they made that you can argue was not necessary. It's still something I can certainly enjoy again and again. So when we talk about the characters, I'm sure the first question asked about them is, to keep it brief, are they just stereotypes? Answer? Honestly, not really. Again, yes, there are things you can clearly tell that you could consider a checkbox in what society believes is your standard trope in an LGBT plus character. However, they are a lot more than what they are shown at first glance. These characters have a lot of complexity to them, and that starts off with the leader of the Q-Force squadron, Steve Merriweather, aka Agent Mary. Now when it comes to Mary, he is a dude that certainly comes off headstrong in his personality. With him essentially being shunned for coming out as gay at his graduation, he became very finicky after being put on the sidelines for 10 years, which is probably an understatement. However, his drive and cockiness leads him into making very abrasive and risky decisions that could lead him and his team into more unpleasant situations. When he does do things way over his head, he does show concern for the people he is close with. Can't say the same for the dudes he fucked to get the info he wanted in each mission, but I digress. Mary is a character that is very flexible and knows how to take a punch, but can be stingy when it comes to trying to get the approval of higher authority within the AIA. He's a leader that has to deal with a lot of growing pains, but he shows good heart and always wants to put his team first over everything else. Next up, we have Deb. As I said in the animation segment, she is considered to be the muscle and motherly type within the show. I will say that there is something that's different with Deb that makes her more intriguing than not. That would be her being more peeved about having to clean up the messes the team has made as the season went on. She's really big on keeping her wife Pam safe, and keeping her spy life and her personal life as separate as possible. So when that line begins to blur, seeing her having to cope with the idea of having her worlds combined was very intriguing to witness. I could only imagine how frustrating it could be when your profession can bleed into your personal life when you don't want it to. Pam is someone who helps keep her emotions in check. Without her, she can go ballistic at any given moment, which really gives the opportunity to show that Black women can be vulnerable. And that's a breath of fresh air for me. So if there was one character I would say that follows the trope to a T, it would have to be Twink, hands down. He checks every box when it comes to the stereotype that gets labeled onto gay men, which, I'll be honest, I'm not against that. The reason why is that we have to recognize that there are those that embrace the queerness of their personality, and it fits well with Twink being the comedic relief of the group. He's not someone that backs down and can hold his own with the best of them, though he is the most melodramatic, especially when he gets reminded of his past.
What the fuck?
Even then, he still has the voice, the looks, and all the glamour to be a very entertaining character that's used sparingly for a good amount of time. Stat, I'll be honest, as a character I don't have a lot of interest in. Obviously, she's a more cutthroat character that has passive-aggressive comments towards her peers. She definitely has useful moments when the plot calls for her. She is pretty much the yin to Twink's yang with the fantastic chemistry they have together. However, due to her being a more sheltered character, her development was nowhere near as strong compared to the others that are heavily involved in the show. So if the show continues on, I would like to see her be utilized in the story a lot more compared to how she was used in season 1. She has some decent moments, but overall they didn't develop her outside of the gothic lesbian hacker. Next, we have Buck, a misogynistic, overly cocky, perverted, and homophobic asshat. In the beginning, I really liked the way they handled Buck here throughout the season. They go out of their way to make Buck very dislikable in the beginning, essentially a last-minute replacement to the out-and-about Mary as valedictorian. Buck goes out of his way to make sure to remind his former classmate of his own success. Even with all of that, he is very entertaining with the role he was given. The dude's headstrong personality really gave me the most laugh when he falls short in certain situations. Plus, we do get to know more about him as the season goes on, as well as have a little sympathy in doing so. We actually see the show tackle something with Buck, a man's mental health. One episode really touched on that, and I may make a full review on it. Who knows? I will say I do wonder what they would do with him if the series does get greenlit for another season. There's a bit of excitement and nervousness when it comes to that. We'll just have to wait and see. To wrap up the group, we have the commander-in-chief of this group of spies in V. So V is a very interesting character to really analyze because in all honesty, she plays off a lot of vibes extremely well. You can portray her in many ways when it comes to her personality, especially when we see her grow within the season. She's more than just a stereotypical woman on the screen. She actually mingles with the crew early and often, and they explain why within the story very well when we see her away from the squad. It's very clear that she has a drive for being in the front lines, and they really dive into her past in the second half of the season. She has a lot of flair and spice, which blends very well with the rest of the cast. In some ways, she has a lot of ambition and determination just like Mary has. So seeing V as Mary's mentor really plays around with the type of motherly bond she has with him especially. Honestly, she's the most interesting higher exec-like character I've seen in a very long time. So to keep this simple, I think the story is best explained by the poet himself.
Layers! Onions have layers.
There's a lot of things intertwined in the story that helps make it engaging. As I alluded to in the animation portion, they play around with the levels within each episode. While there are certainly moments that are completely off the wall, it doesn't come off as incredibly shocking. Reason being is because there are plenty of choices that help build up to the eventual scene. It's incredibly well placed, and they really know how to engage the audience with the variety of jokes placed in it. Mentioning those that are considered to be K icons like Deborah Winger, Adam Lambert, and Ariana Grande? Anyways, there's a variety of jokes that are fitting for every generation of gay. None of it comes off as distracting to what the story is portraying. In fact, I would say that it does help elevate the story it's telling throughout the season, giving us fantastic undertones in the issues of homophobia synced into an organization and how it affects the relationships in and out of work, not to mention the misuse of being an ally of a marginalized group to gain a positive outlook in the media. Even then, we get to see a large variety of characters within the gay community and give a majority of them a ton of substance with their personality. Not every person is interested into the drag life or sex parties, so seeing the levels within each of them are great when it comes to representation. I know the show didn't have the best perception when the trailers first came out, but I can attest that not everything is as bad as it seems. In fact, you can end up enjoying it a lot more than what you expect. Thanks for taking the time to see this review. It was fun to tackle another show's attempt at representation. If you'd like to see other representation reviews, click on the video to the left. Hit the subscribe and bell icon to get notified for future videos. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.